Okay, hey guys, I wanted to talk about the Harvard lawsuit that's going on with affirmative action. If you guys don't know, it's an Asian guy, I don't know his name, that's taking Harvard to court on the basis that they discriminate against Asians. And I want to say that's true. I know that's true. And I'm going to backtrack and kind of tell you a little bit about my story, why I believe that's true, and what I think about affirmative action. So I remember when my dad told me this years ago, and it blew my mind, and I didn't understand what he was saying at the time, but he was telling me that he didn't like affirmative action, and I said, why? And he said, because you're admitting that they're better than you. And I was like, what? Oh my God. And then when I became older, I saw one of my best friends who was white was told that he was going to have to, get higher on his SAT scores because he was white. And we had the same education, and I just thought that was so messed up, and that really disillusioned him from going to college, because I felt like we all worked just as hard. And anyway, so that was one of the first flaws that I started seeing in that system. And at that time too, looking at the data, the largest beneficiaries for affirmative action is white women, okay? So that's a whole nother topic. So I was a long-term sub for Los Angeles Unified School District for 8 years, and I was gonna get my credential, and I worked at one school. And my sixth grade teacher was at one school who I worked side by side with, and my cousin was at the other school who I worked side by side with, and they both told me don't get credentials. And these are two of the most brilliant teachers, passionate teachers I've ever known, but they were worn out, and they were just like, just kind of fed up with the system. So I taught in South Central my first 8 years of teaching, and what I noticed is that you can't study or focus in an environment that's ridden with gang violence, right? It's hard on the teachers too. It's hard on teachers to teach when you have all these behavioral problems. It's hard on the teachers when you have a lot of illegal immigrants. Yes, I fucking said it, because the classroom is overcrowded and there's a huge language barrier. Nobody talks about the complexities of language and clashing. Even if the people are good, but there's still a whole another multitude of problems that arises when people can't speak the language. Or even if you do, I do speak Spanish, but even if you do speak the language, it's like it slows everything down for both people that are cultures that are trying to learn. So, but I noticed that the biggest problem for me with education in inner city schools is safety. So if I'm using Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a rubric, right? So at the bottom, there's you need food, water, shelter. The top one is safety, and the next one is social, circles, esteem, and then there's one more I'm missing, I know, but at the top of the tier is self-actualization or self-realization. This is where you can learn and create problems and problem solve. So I see the people in South Central, a lot of people that are at the bottom as people that, they need to get to the top before they can to actually make good grades and really care about education. Because you're not cared about education if you're worrying about being stabbed on the way to school, or in school, or on the way to your next class, or being shot, or drug dealers, or gang violence, or all that shit. And people that want to talk about black people killing other black people in inner city neighborhoods, that's true. But what I think a lot of people also don't realize too, a lot of gangs, in order to get into gang, it depends on the type of gang. Some gangs you get jumped in where they just beat you up. In other gangs, you have to kill somebody. And you usually have to kill an innocent person. You don't kill another gang member. You have to kill a child or a teacher or somebody that's not even involved in gangs. So there's also that paranoia of when you're in that environment that you're gonna get knocked off just for shits and giggles, okay? So you can't make good grades or have good SAT scores if you are worried about that, And if you don't have the support. I'm lucky, even though, we were poor, I had the support. I had a cousin that was a teacher. I come from a family teacher. There's a lot of teachers in my family. My mom was supportive. I had a lot of people. And then, and a lot of teachers, if they see that your family supported, then you always get extra help because, that's what the teacher sees. So and teachers need help, and teachers they need more money, yes, but it's not just about money. They also need help, like help from the community, right? But so this is my experience teaching in South Central. When I moved to Taiwan for 2 years, I got my TESOL and TEFL certificate, and I came back and I taught at a Chinese prep school for almost 3 years, and it was different. And what I found different was these kids work their ass off. They work their ass off like no one before. I actually knew this because growing up the first 8 years of my life in the area of LA, which is called Koreatown. I mean, it wasn't called Koreatown when I was growing up there. It was just an area of LA where there were a lot of Asian and Latin immigrants, and a lot of my friends were Asian. And they would even have school on Saturdays. It was like, hey, Sung Jim, could you come out to play? And they're like, no, I have school. And you're like, what? It's Saturday. They were at school on Saturday, okay? They not only go to regular school, but they go to extra school after school. Then they get like, they're learning an instrument, and they're taking classes on the weekends. And when I would talk to my students, I'd be like, what do you do on Sunday? And they're like, sleep. They're working their ass off. They're studying for the SAT from the time that they're 13. And even though I understand where the parents are coming from, I really think there's flaws in that side as well. I think it's fucked up on that side as well, because people are sacrificing, these kids are sacrificing their personalities and their souls, right? A lot of them are very unhappy. A lot of them, there is in different countries like Japan, and maybe even here too, there's cheating, suicide, depression, because they don't have any time to be themselves and to be expressive and creative. It's just like memorization and regurgitation only so they can do well on these tests. But they work their ass off and they sacrifice their childhood to do good on these tests and to get into school. And yet, I found out that the Asian kids that I work with, and these are for the UC schools, okay? I think also I found somebody was talking about like how they get points taken off their SAT scores, just because they're Asian. So that's why they're really, they figured out how to work the system, and all power to them. And I don't think that they should be punished for it. And I think that I don't think that Asians are super smart because they're Asians. I don't think it is a genetic deal. I think it is because they have that family support, and they don't really have violence in their communities, and and they're working their ass off, so they deserve it. And when I found that out, I was livid because my kids that I taught did not, they didn't deserve it. They worked their ass off. If they're going to get a perfect score in the SAT, they deserve to have every single point on that score counted towards their college education. And then my kids in South Central, I'm livid, because of the situation they're in, because all the drugs that they're being put on, by the way, because of all the psychotropic drugs they're being put on, because of the lack of resources in the school. So, I mean, and no matter if you're coming from like an Asian school or richer area, or you're coming from the poor side of education, it's all messed up. The whole education system needs a redo, because they're both trained to be cogs in a machine. So, I had a friend that was telling me after 3rd grade, they test children in inner cities, and then that gives them an indication by how many kids that do well on that test as to how many prisons are going to be built. Okay, so this is systematic, right? It's like they're both building cogs. They're maybe you're a smaller cog, you're a lesser educated cog if you're in the poor cities, but if you're in you know, on the richer side, you're in an Asian area, you're a bigger cog. Maybe you're aiming at, you know, at being a doctor or being like a scientist or something, but you're still a cog, right? You're still not allowed to be fully self-expressed. You're still not, what am I trying to say? You're still not, you know, happy. You know, I mean, I think there's more to life than just test scores and good grades and getting into a good college. You know, as we know, since this election, you see a lot of supposedly educated people giving their opinion on TV, and they're dumb as dirt, okay? There are a lot of educated people that don't have common sense. They don't have critical thinking skills. They just know to repeat whatever, you know, they're being turned into computers. They just repeat whatever they hear on TV or what they read in their book, but they can't think outside of that. And that's just as detrimental as somebody that can't read and can't, you know, both people can, I'm going to say this, detrimental to somebody that can't read and they can't, they don't have access to information as somebody, you know, that can read, but they don't have critical thinking skills. Neither of them have the ability to really have critical thinking skills because of the situations, even though they're putting it, they're in different sides, they're on different sides of the scale, but they have different situations, but they're still cogs. So, you know, when I got out and I'm really into mnemonics and learning, I'm still an autodidact, I like learning myself. But I would think about like things like, why don't they teach speed reading or photo reading to children? It's not, doesn't cost a lot of money to teach. You know, why don't they teach us? Why don't they teach mnemonics? Why are these memory skills only afforded to people that, you know, have money? So I think later on I'm gonna do another video just talking about the education. In fact, I might even interview some of my friends that are teachers where we can talk about this, because I really think that money is not going to solve the problem at all. It's going to be a paradigm shift that needs to happen. And I think for the Harvard lawsuit, this is going to be really good. And it's going to be, you know why also it's going to be good? Because a lot of Asians are going to wake up, because they're going to see how the mainstream media, and I've already looked at videos, how they're talking down to Asians and saying that they basically just need to suck it up and that they're being delusional. And they're going to see how the mainstream media is going to lie and turn against them, because, you know, they're not following the narrative. So to the person that started the lawsuit, if somebody in the comments knows, please put his name in the comments. Please comment and let me know your thoughts about this. So the person that started the lawsuit, Jayo, I hope you win, and I hope this opens up a bigger conversation. And I would like to also see some alternatives and I want to see real talk about the inner city and what needs to happen, because it's not money, it's not better education. It has to do with the family stability and the communities, and that's when we're going to start to see higher test scores and more people in the inner city that's educated, that's excited and inspired about gaining knowledge and getting an education. All right, guys, that's it. That's all I have to say. Peace, truth, love. Okay, bye-bye. Mwah.